At 04:17 hours on 14 July 1944, Private First Class Thomas Edward Hale lay motionless beneath a mat of rotting banana leaves on the northern ridge of Guam, his cheek pressed into red clay that smelled of rust and decay. The temperature hovered at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, the humidity a suffocating 94%, and the jungle breathed in slow, wet exhales as night loosened its grip. Hale had not moved in nearly 3 hours. He could not afford to. 17 hours earlier, battalion command had written him off. Below him, the jungle sloped downward at a shallow 12-degree grade, broken by limestone outcroppings and tangled vines. In the half-light before dawn, visibility was less than 40 yards, the world rendered in shades of blue and black. Somewhere downslope, metal tapped stone, soft, deliberate, a canteen cup, a rifle sling buckle. The unmistakable sound of men moving uphill with discipline. They were soldiers of the Imperial Japanese Army, advancing in 3 staggered files, spacing themselves at roughly 6 paces apart, bayonets fixed, heads low. Hale counted at least 30, maybe 35. He had 28 rounds. His rifle lay across his forearms, wrapped in strips of torn shelter half canvas to dull any shine. It was a standard-issue M1 Garand, chambered in 30-06 Springfield, with a 24-inch barrel and an unloaded weight of 9.5 pounds. But Hale's rifle was wrong, at least according to the officers who had laughed when they saw it. He had disabled the gas system with a hand-filed steel plug, scavenged from a wrecked generator 2 weeks earlier. The modification turned the semi-automatic rifle into a single-shot weapon, forcing him to manually cycle the action after every round. Slower, quieter, controllable, a waste of a good rifle, a captain had said. Not regulation, another had added, already walking away. Hale didn't argue, he never did. A mosquito crawled beneath his collar, biting the soft skin at the base of his neck. He ignored it. Sweat pooled in the crooks of his elbows, soaking into the canvas wrap. His breathing slowed, 4 breaths per minute, shallow and measured. He tasted salt and iron. The jungle went quiet. Cicadas stopped first. Then birds. The silence arrived in layers, pressing down until the only sound Hale heard was the faint creak of leather and the dull thud of boots on damp earth. He angled his head just enough to see through the notch in the leaves he'd cut with a bayonet the night before. The lead scout appeared at 180 yards, then disappeared behind brush. Hale tracked him by sound alone. At 120 yards, he saw the glint of a bayonet blade. At 94 yards, the man stepped into a pocket of pale light, his face young, expression relaxed. One of them chuckled softly, an almost conversational sound. Hale adjusted the rifle by a fraction of an inch. He watched fern fronds sway, measuring wind drift at 2 to 3 miles per hour left to right. His finger settled on the trigger, pressure building in ounces, not pounds. He did not fire. Somewhere far behind him, 1,200 yards to the south, his platoon had pulled back under orders. The battalion logbook, written in pencil smeared by rain, carried a single line. PFC Hale presumed KIA or captured. On paper, he was already gone. The Japanese column continued uphill, compressing as the terrain narrowed. Hale counted again, 28 rounds, 30 men. The math did not favor him. He felt the rifle stock slick beneath his palm, the wood swollen from days of rain. The smell of cordite lingered faintly from a skirmish hours earlier, mixing with rot and wet leaves. He whispered to himself, barely moving his lips. White. At 04:19 hours, the lead element reached 60 yards. Bayonets gleamed dully. One soldier adjusted his helmet strap. Another wiped sweat from his mouth with the back of his hand. Hale exhaled, long and controlled, emptying his lungs until there was nothing left to shake. His sight picture steadied. His finger tightened. The trigger broke. Silence, then a voice, low and measured. In the next 38 minutes, one discarded rifle and one forgotten infantryman would halt an entire advance and rewrite the meaning of being cut off. Thomas Edward Hale was born on 12 February 1919 in a narrow third-floor tenement off East Street in South Boston, a neighborhood where the Atlantic never stopped announcing itself. Foghorns rolled in before dawn. Diesel exhaust clung to brick walls. Salt settled into everything, windowsills, lungs, the creases of working men's hands. Hale learned early that the world rewarded endurance more than complaint. His father, Edward Hale, worked the longshore docks until a snapped cable crushed his left foot in November 1931. The injury never healed correctly. After that, his father limped, then stayed home. His mother, Margaret, took on extra laundry shifts, returning at night with red hands that smelled of soap and hot metal. Thomas, the eldest, quit school at 16. He went to work where the noise was. From June 1936 to August 1941, Hale was employed as a dockside machinery fitter at a small, independent repair yard that serviced aging Atlantic cargo vessels. The work was unglamorous and exacting. He learned to file steel shafts to tolerances tighter than 1/64 of an inch, by feel more than measurement. He learned how to identify a misaligned bearing by the rhythm of vibration under his fingertips. In winter, his hands cracked and bled. In summer, sweat blurred his vision. He did not rushing ruined machines. At night, when rats flooded the piers in numbers that alarmed the harbor authority, Hale borrowed a battered .22 caliber rifle from a coworker. He shot from shadows, learning how sound traveled over water, how movement betrayed position, how breathing mattered more than reflex. He missed often at first, then less, then almost never. It was never sport, it was simply another problem to solve. On Sunday, 7 December 1941, Hale was standing at the end of a shift, wiping grease from his hands, when the radio in a dockside bar crackled with news from Hawaii. He listened without expression. He finished his beer. He returned home. 4 days later, on 11 December 1941, he enlisted in the United States Army. Basic training began at Fort Benning, where the heat pressed down like a physical weight. Hale struggled with the noise, endless shouting, whistles, the artificial urgency of men who measured competence by volume. He followed orders exactly, but not theatrically. On the rifle range, he unsettled instructors. His shots grouped tightly, consistently, but his cadence was slow. He waited for his sight picture to settle completely. He was reprimanded for failing to keep pace with the line. His final qualification score was the highest in the company. The reprimand remained. The other enlisted men noticed first. They called him clockmaker. He never corrected them. By late 1942, Hale was assigned scout duties. He demonstrated an unnatural ability to move through brush without disturbing it, to identify shapes in darkness others dismissed as shadow. His squad trusted him. The officers filed neutral evaluations: technically proficient, lacks aggression. In April 1944, Hale shipped out with the 77th Infantry Division, departing San Francisco on 24 April. Weeks at sea passed in drills and heat. He disassembled his rifle repeatedly, studying its tolerances the way he once studied ship machinery. Somewhere between Hawaii and the Marianas, he began experimenting quietly. By the time the division approached Guam, Hale understood something the manuals did not. Jungle fighting punished speed and rewarded patience. The Army had not taught him that. The jungle would. The flaw revealed itself slowly, the way most fatal errors do, not as a single catastrophe, but as a pattern that only became obvious after men were already dead. American infantry doctrine in the summer of 1944 was built on assumptions forged in Europe and on training grounds far from the equator. Fire superiority meant volume. The M1 Garand, with its 8-round end-block clip and semi-automatic action, was designed to dominate open ground. Squads were trained to advance by noise as much as movement, pinning the enemy with sound. On Guam, sound was a liability. The jungle swallowed light and distorted distance. Engagement ranges collapsed to 20, sometimes 40 yards. Gunfire did not echo cleanly. It ricocheted, fractured, returned from impossible angles. A single rifle report could be heard for hundreds of yards, guiding enemy movement like a beacon. Hale noticed first because he was watching. On 3 July 1944, at 21:40 hours, the squad was probing a limestone draw north of Mount Tenjo. Visibility was less than 30 yards. When Private Leonard Lenny Kowalski, age 19, from Toledo, Ohio, fired instinctively at movement he could not identify, the report cracked through the jungle like a hammer on glass. Within seconds, flanking fire cut through the brush. Kowalski took a round through the upper chest. He was dead before the corpsman reached him. 2 nights later, Corporal James Ortega, 27, from El Paso, Texas, was stabbed during a silent infiltration while adjusting a jammed bar. The enemy had heard the weapon being worked. The worst came on 7 July at 02:10 hours. Private First Class Thomas Hale finished the rifle on the night of 12 July 1944, crouched beneath a poncho stretched between 2 saplings, the fabric sagging with rainwater. There was no light. He worked by memory and touch, fingers moving the way they had on dock machinery years earlier, counting turns, measuring resistance, listening to metal speak. He removed the gas cylinder lock first, easing it free with a stripped screwdriver wrapped in cloth. The jungle hummed inches from his ears. Every scrape felt loud, even though he knew it was. From a generator wreck scavenged days earlier, he had cut a narrow steel plug, 1.8 inches long, filed down by hand until it seated perfectly inside the gas port. The tolerances were unforgiving. Too loose and the system would cycle. Too tight and the pressure spike could shear the op rod clean in half. He tested the fit with slow, deliberate pressure. Perfect. By sealing the gas system, the rifle lost its defining feature. No semi-automatic action, no violent metallic slap as the bolt cycled. Each shot now required Hale to manually retract the operating rod, guiding the spent casing out with 2 fingers before easing the bolt forward again. Slower, but almost silent. Wrapped in canvas, the ejection made no more sound than a stick brushing leaves. He worked until 02, 30 hours on 13 July, hands numb, shoulders aching. When he finished, he lay on his back in the mud, staring into darkness, listening to his heart slow. Testing came later that afternoon in an abandoned coral quarry south of the line. Hale paced distances carefully, 25 yards, 50, 100, 200, marking them with pebbles. Each shot was followed by stillness. He listened. At 80 yards, the report dissolved into jungle noise. At 100, nothing, accuracy held. The rifle grouped tight, the recoil manageable, the sight picture steady. It was enough. That night, battalion orders came down, withdrawal by 200. Japanese pressure was increasing. Hale volunteered to stay behind, covering the movement. No speeches, no objections. The lieutenant nodded without looking up. By the time the last man pulled back 1,200 yards, Hale was already moving uphill, selecting his ground. He chose the ridge because it forced a climb, because sound carried upward poorly, because the approach narrowed to 3 natural channels. He dug in shallow, arranging leaves and mud with care. When he lay down, he disappeared. At 4:17 hours on 14 July 1944, the enemy reached the base of the slope. Hale is present tense now. He is still. His breathing is shallow. The rifle rests into his shoulder like it belongs there. Sweat runs down his spine. The air smells of rot and metal. The jungle waits. The lead scout steps into view at 94 yards. Hale exhales. The trigger breaks cleanly. The rifle coughs. No crack, no echo. The recoil presses straight back. The scout drops without sound, momentum folding him forward into the brush. Hale guides the bolt back, catches the casing, slips it into his pocket. 1 round gone at 4:19. The column pauses, murmurs, confusion. A second man moves to investigate. Shot 2, 88 yards. He falls sideways, rifle clattering softly against a root. Hale works the action again, hands steady, movements economical. His heart rate remains low. He feels the warmth of the barrel through the canvas wrap. By 04:22, 3 bodies lie unseen in the undergrowth. The Japanese do not fire, they cannot locate the sound, they whisper, they gesture. 2 men advance together. Shot 3, shot 4, one drops instantly, the other staggers, wounded, cries out. That sound changes everything. The column compresses, men move faster, one fires blindly downhill. The muzzle flash blooms uselessly. Hale does not move. At 04:27, the 5th target steps into the same pocket of light. Hale adjusts for wind, still 2-3 mph, left to right. The bullet strikes high center mass. The man collapses backward, eyes wide. The enemy begins to rush. They come faster now, bunching up, bayonets forward. They think they're closing on a single position. They are wrong. Hale shifts fire to the file leaders. He ignores the men behind. Each shot is deliberate. Distances collapse to 70 yards, 60, 55. He tracks by movement, by sound, by instinct sharpened over years of waiting. At 04:35, he has fired 12 rounds. 12 bodies lie scattered across the slope. The jungle smells faintly of hot metal and blood. Hale's shoulder aches, his fingers are slick. The Japanese try flanking. 2 men break right, attempting to climb through thick brush. Hale pivots slightly, adjusting his angle by 6 degrees. Shot 13, the first flanker drops. Shot 14, the second turns to run and falls forward, face first into mud. The enemy fires again, wild, panicked. Bullets snap overhead, cutting leaves. 1 round strikes a tree 3 feet from Hale's head, showering bark. He does not lift his cheek from the stock. By 04:44, only a handful remain moving uphill. Dawn is coming now, the light thinning the shadows. Hale knows time is short. He fires faster, not rushed, but efficient. Shot 15, shot 16, shot 17. Each time he cycles the bolt, guides the casing away, breathes. At 04:50, the last organized push falters. Survivors begin dragging wounded backward. One officer stands, shouting orders. Shot 23, 120 yards. The officer collapses mid-sentence. The slope empties. Hale waits. At 04:55, movement again. A single soldier crawling, trying to retrieve a fallen rifle. Hale settles the sight. Shot 28. The final round. Silence follows, not the tense silence from before, but the hollow kind that arrives after violence has spent itself. The jungle resumes breathing. Birds return cautiously. Hale does not move for 11 minutes. His hands shake now, fine tremors from dehydration and strain. His mouth is dry. His muscles burn. When friendly scouts finally approach from below, they find a man still in position, rifle cold, eyes alert. 28 rounds fired, 28 men do not rise, the ridge holds. When daylight fully broke over the ridge on 14 July 1944, it revealed what the night had concealed. 28 bodies lay scattered across a slope less than 300 yards wide, positioned in no pattern that made sense to men trained to read battlefield geometry. Some had fallen face first into coral dust. Others lay twisted among roots and vines, rifles still slung. There was no single point of fire, no obvious line of advance. To the men who climbed the ridge hours later, it looked as though the jungle itself had turned against them. Friendly reconnaissance moved carefully, expecting resistance that never came. They counted twice, then again, the numbers did not change. Word spread without paper, no formal report recorded what had happened. The company log mentioned only successful delay of enemy movement due to favorable terrain and disciplined fire. No weapon modifications were described. No names attached to the event, it was safer that way. Silence once again served a purpose. Among the enlisted men, the story traveled differently. It moved in murmurs passed while cleaning weapons, in glances exchanged before night patrols. No one exaggerated it, no one needed to. The phrase that stuck was simple: don't rush it, do it like Hale. There was no hero talk, just instruction. The effect was measurable, even if no one wrote it down. In the weeks before the ridge action, night probes on Guam carried an average casualty rate of approximately 18% per engagement. Men fired instinctively, fast and loud, revealing positions that the jungle could not forgive. Afterward something changed. Riflemen slowed, scouts waited longer. Fewer shots were fired, but they were placed with intention. By late July, informal tallies kept by platoon sergeants showed night action casualty rates dropping to under 7%. No new doctrine had been issued, no training circulars circulated. The adjustment lived entirely in practice, passed from man to man the way working knowledge always is. Battalion command noticed the numbers but avoided the cause. An investigation would have required questions about unauthorized weapon modifications, about deviations from established procedure. Instead, after-action summaries credited terrain, weather, and increased combat experience. It was a bureaucratic compromise, acknowledgement without examination. Hale received neither reprimand nor commendation. His rifle was returned to standard configuration under orders he did not argue with. The Imperial Japanese Army adjusted as well. Captured documents and later intelligence reports noted increased spacing during night movement, longer halts, and a growing reluctance to advance uphill in silence. Units reported encountering multiple concealed riflemen where none existed. The psychological effect of an unseen, methodical presence outweighed the material reality. One rifle had become many in the enemy's imagination. Hale did not participate in the discussions. He returned to his squad and continued his duties. He did not demonstrate his technique openly. He answered questions only when asked, and then briefly. His focus remained practical. Where to move, when to wait, when to fire. The war continued without ceremony. By the time the campaign ended, Hale had survived without distinction. No photographs were taken of him for newspapers. No interviews requested his account. When demobilization orders came in late 1945, he folded his uniforms carefully, turned in his equipment, and boarded a train east. South Boston had not changed much. The docks still smelled of diesel and salt. The cranes still groaned under load. Hale returned to machinery fit